covering the Fender Telecaster, arguably the first electric production solid body guitar. We will be covering this instrument from 1950 to 1969 and showing many examples of vintage Telecasters from the inside out. On camera, step by step, we will take apart many vintage Telecasters in a chronological order, showing you the progression of these instruments and how they changed through the years, and what is original and what could be perceived as non-original. We will also show you the evolution of the cases which the instruments were housed in. I would like to add that we are not vintage guitar dealers. Myself, my buddy Clyde, and our cameraman Norm are just vintage guitar enthusiasts. The purpose of this video is to give people information so that when they are buying vintage guitars, they can determine if the instrument is original. So sit back and relax while we take you through the vintage Fender Telecaster from 1950 to 1969. Welcome to This Old Guitar. The purpose of these tapes is to show you a particular style or type of guitar from the inside out, with the idea that maybe if you go to buy a guitar that you'll be more educated at what you're looking at. There's been lots of videotapes and programs and TV shows on guitars, who plays them, their sound. This is a different angle, one that'll show you the guitars from the inside out and what to look for in originality and composition. My name is Shaggy, and I've got my buddy Clyde here. Say hello, Clyde.
How you doing, everyone?
Clyde, tell me how long you've been collecting guitars.
Probably about 25 years now. I started back in the days when they were still called used guitars, and
high school, right? You started in
high school.
16 years old or something?
Yeah, 16.
I was about the same. So we're going to show you the inside of these guitars, and we're going to concentrate today on Fender guitars. Originality and condition are the two things that factor into the price of a vintage guitar.
There is a lot of bogus examples of them, a lot of parts guitars that over the years have been passed off as originals and so on. So I think we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what to look for, hopefully for you to evaluate whether or not you're looking at an instrument that is original to the, down to the screws.
Okay, our first example is an early 1951, what's known as a no-caster. In fact, it's a Telecaster or a broadcaster.
Essentially a broadcaster.
Essentially a broadcaster. The broadcaster started production about October of 1950, and they only used that name until about January 1951.
Well, it's good to mention that the first name they came up with was Esquire, which predates Broadcaster, which they did for an incredibly short period of time, and which was in
the summer of 50.
In the summer of 1950, and the prototypes were either one or two pickup models, so that may have been a few months, short-lived. Then went to the Broadcaster in the fall of 1950.
And the Esquires largely had their necks replaced because the one thing that some Esquires did not have was a truss rod. You can see easily here the walnut stripe that's inlaid into the maple that shows where the truss rod was inserted through the back of the neck. Some Esquires did not have one. Now, Fender put an offer out to all original Esquire owners to have the neck replaced because they were afraid that they were going to warp. Right. So original Esquires are extremely hard to find.
He modeled a lot of the tone and what he considered to be a pleasing sound after the early steels, which was actually the first instrument that he made before the
lap steel.
Who you hitting? Out! Go on. Be quiet.
My buddy Brian here has a K&F lap steel. Fender before it was Fender. Tell us a little bit about it, Brian.
This is a unique instrument from about 1946 when Leo Fender and Doc Kaufman had a radio repair shop in Fullerton, California. And basically it's a very unique instrument in the sense that it's a simple instrument and uses sheet metal work in a very skillful way to complete the instrument. For example, if we look at the headstock, it actually bends the sheet metal in the shape of the nut up here.
And it shows the front end of the headstock so we can see the logo too, where it says, yeah, there you go. where it actually says K and F.
Yeah, it says electric stringed instruments and amplifiers, K&F, Fullerton, California. Very simple 3 on a plate.
Look like Clusins.
Yep.
Yeah, that is pretty.
It's got a blonde wood body. It looks like it may be alder or some derivative of alder. It's got a unique terraced body routing along the edge on the face, and if we look on the back as well. The actual fret markers or position markers are silkscreen black ink. And if we take a look at the control section, this is all integral. It's got the output jack at the butt end of the guitar, a plate that curves around the butt end of the guitar, which houses a volume and tone control, and what is dubbed a boxcar pickup. And the strings route through an actual coil.
Kind of like a horseshoe pickup on a Rickenbacker.
Exactly. Same kind of idea. If you look closely on each end of this pickup, you can see magnets which energize the coil.
And that's the original finish on there. And show us the case.
This is the original gig bag that comes with the instrument.
He's talking pig Latin. I don't know what he's saying.
So on this guitar, the one thing to notice right off before we even get into the guitar itself is the case. This is an original case. It's known as a thermometer case due to its shape. The slightly bulbous head looks like a vintage thermometer. Right. So this is, a lot of people get this confused with another term called the poodle case, but in fact the poodle case is something they only used in '54 that has a flat, one side is flat. We'll cover that later. Another thing is that came with this guitar when it was brand new is we have the original strap.
Right, okay. Which I think they did till 1954.
This style, into roughly 54. We have the original bridge plate cover that goes over the pickup in the bridge.
Which you should mention the solder.
Yeah, one thing that I don't know if you can get in here, Norm. See right where my finger is? There's like a slight little solder bulb. They don't all have this, but a good number of them do. What this is this was an electrical connection to help with the chrome plating that was put when they chrome plated these things. But you don't always see this. Right. This little solder blob.
It's a good indication of an early cover.
Yes, exactly. And here's the original cord that also came with the guitar. It's a great cord. By today's standards, it's useless. It's pretty much brittle. But that's the original cord, strap, and bridge cover. And the guitar itself, the body is made out of ash. The early ones tend to be one piece of ash, but not always. Does it make any difference? No. It's just a cute thing to say, and people say, I've got a one-piece ash body. You can also see often the seam line along this edge if you look. And this one is one piece. It doesn't have a seam line. The pick guard is a fiber, they call it Bakelite. It's a phenolic plastic with a fiber base. The fiber is used to make the pick guard stronger so it doesn't crack. These little initials here are not original. Here, I'm going to flip this thing over.
A very common thing in 50s Fenders.
Very common.
Is that factory, or was guys did that later?
Oh, they did this.
Yeah, I think that was it was like having like lightning bolts now,
Right. Another thing is that Norm, if you can get Norm's our cameraman, by the way. We didn't really introduce him.
Yes, we should introduce Norm.
Yeah, Norm's from Boston. He helps us with the camera work. You can see the serial number on this guitar. It's 1917. Serial number is kind of irrelevant on these guitars. It basically goes from 0001 up to 5200.
There's been a lot of discussion too about how they actually went through. There's no real sequential sort of pattern to the original. A lot of right up even to the late 50s, you'll get stuff that seems like it's going to be in a somewhat of a sequential order. Especially these early guitars, you might have a guitar that's actually predates the serial number of another guitar by a few months. And I think over the years people discussed, well, maybe they just had a large bin and they pulled them out randomly and applied them to guitars. It wasn't like, say, Gibson, who was very methodical and would actually try to keep a sequential serial number system for the dates of the guitars.
The switch tip is a round style switch tip, opposed to the newer mid-50s, so it was 55, I believe, they went to the more of a
top hat.
Yeah, top hat style. But we're going to open this guy up and we're going to show you the inside of this and basically how to determine.
What about the finish on it? I think you want to talk about that, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a blonde finish. This one's highly yellowed. You can see where the bridge plate was here, where the bridge cover was. It hid the finish and protected it from the yellowing to some degree. We can kind of get an idea of the peanut butter color it was originally was not nowhere
Was it
near.
Smooth to begin with, or is it
quite,
checked over
It's
time?
quite textured right now.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these early finishes were applied so thinly, they're almost like nail polish. And what happens is that, especially the earlier lacquers that Fender used, they tend to almost crystallize. Especially, it's a good indicator on broadcasters and really early Telecasters, such as this one, that the finish almost has like a
Checking.
a serious amount of checking on it.
This is a nitrocellulose lacquer, and as the clear coat that we were talking about before, it yellows with time, and that's why you see a large variant in the colors of these early Telecasters and broadcasters. Now this is a no-caster, and we should tell why it says no-caster. If you go in on the peghead here, Norm, right here, I'll try and hold it steady. You can see it just says Fender. And the reason why it says Fender is that when the broadcaster came out, Fender was notified by the Gretsch company that they had a drum line by the same name.
Right.
So Fender decided, instead of getting any kind of legal hassles, to drop the name broadcaster. So what they did is they just cut off the word broadcaster from the decal and just used Fender on the peghead. This existed this way until about the summer of '51, when the Telecaster name actually came out.
Right.
So a lot of people call them a no-caster because there's no name on it. That's the only reason. It's a collector's term, no-caster.
Right.
Fender never used that.
Well, didn't Telly Savalas try to sue him over using his name?
You can see the Clusen tuners on the back too. I don't know if you can get in here, Norm, right where my fingertip is. You can see the word patent pending. It's engraved or pressed into the metal. So the early ones don't have a hole on this side of the plate and say patent pending right there.
Right.
And actually, these ones do say Clusen down the line. There was
The
this
first edition.
The first edition said Clusen, patent pending, no hole. Then the Clusen went away, and then the hole appeared, and the patent pending went away. So they were granted the patent.
And you guys are pretty anal about this
Sounds
crap.
a little confusing.
Yeah.
But part of the whole overview of this discussion is to really nail down some of the the small details that may or may not have been overlooked in other discussions about
You guys
these
aren't into
guitars.
Star Trek too, I hope.
We lead lonely lives.
Yes. And here's the other thing too. Right here is what's known as a round button tuner string.
You guys need to discover some better licks for your guitar playing, if you know what I mean.
Or get a woman in our life.
Generic term would be button retainer.
Yeah,
right?
button retainer. Now, in '56, this went to what's known as a butterfly clip, which is a different style of string retainer, but the early ones had this round one.
Right.
Also, the frets are what's known as small frets. They're extremely small. They're about 80 thousandths wide, only about 40 thousandths high when they were brand new, high above the fingerboard. And they wear very quickly. And the reason why you get these little like almond wear marks between them is because the frets are actually so low, even when the guitar was new, that your fingers actually hit the fingerboard when you play, and they wore very quickly. Why don't you talk about neck shape?
Neck
the profile of the back shape
Right.
of the neck.
A boat style
Or a baseball bat.
baseball bat style neck. Some guys call it a C style neck because it's kind of like shaped in a C. This was very much the common style neck until about 1955, when you started to see more and more of the soft V neck, and then towards 57 when it got stronger and stronger into the V style necks. But these early guitars,
We're talking about the back shape, you know,
Right.
how it feels,
Right.
you know, against against this part of your hand when you're playing it. The fingerboard was always radiused at 7 1/4 inches. That's how much roundness there was to the actual fingerboard.
Right.
But we're talking about the back shape.
right.
So
The black phenolic plastic pickguard, which is often called a Bakelite pickguard. You can see these letters are not original to the pickguard, but very common thing in the
See
50s.
from this
You
era,
see a lot of 50s Fenders have these, basically the owner's initials, and you can see that the front of it was sprayed with a nitrocellulose lacquer. And an interesting thing about these early guards is that, if you can get a picture of that, you can see almost like a ring around there, which is like it was done with a 1-quart paint can lid. And what Fender did was they sprayed these pick guards as they were sitting on top of the cord.
So you had like a cord here. They only sprayed the top. Okay, so only the top side has lacquer, and you can actually see the checking on the pick guard and where it's worn through the lacquer here. So on this side, there's no clear coat, and the only reason you have this ring is because from overspray shooting numerous pick guards, when they put them down there, they got a little lacquer on there. Now, not every one of these black pick guards is going to have this, but a lot of them do.
Yeah, and it's definitely something you might want to look for in an early 50s blackguard.
So who was NAL?
Actually, I think there was one more initial there.
Abraham Lincoln, maybe? I don't know.
Okay, you can see on the face of the guitar, when we remove the pick guard, how much different the color is under here. And this is due, once again, to the environment yellowing the lacquer that was more in contact with the air.
Right. This would be what it probably started as.
Yeah.
So there's a paint
maybe
first, a pickling
amount.
like the oak, isn't there?
Right, exactly. Now, the thing to look for first on the finishes that I always look for are what's known as the nail holes. Now, the way Fender sprayed these guitars is they laid the guitar down on a Lazy Susan. Okay, then they drove a finishing nail here, approximately here, here, and here, and they sprayed the front of the guitar and the sides. Then they flipped the guitar over, and it would sit on the nails, and they could spray the back and the sides again. That's how they finished it. But when they got all done, they pulled the nails out. So if you notice, these nail holes don't have any paint in them. Like here's one. And the position of the nail holes will vary, but generally it's going to be in this area right here. But you can see there's some white powder in this nail hole, and that is the rubbing compound.
Yeah.
No, not that kind of powder.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. And then right here,
There might be some white powder,
Abraham was a doper.
but it's not original to the guitar.
yeah.
Well, how do you know? Maybe they're doing that at a factory. Maybe they were ahead of their time.
And then right here's another nail hole. This one's pretty clean, but you can see there's
Because it's been used.
There's no paint in the nail holes.
No coke in
so
there.
I always look for those, because if you see paint in the nail holes, body's refinished or oversprayed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It is refinished or oversprayed. Also notice that this is a ash body, and the graining of the body, you can really see the grain. But this will vary from wood to wood. I mean, not every piece of ash is really highly grained, but this one's pretty nice. Diagonal route is not present in a good number of broadcasters. Some have it, some don't. Most no-casters will have this route, though there probably are some no-casters out there that don't have it. On some broadcasters and a few no-casters that do not have this diagonal wiring route, what Fender did instead is they used a long drill bit, and they would drill through the neck route pickup cavity and at an angle into the bridge cavity, and then the pickup wires for the neck pickup would route through this hole into the bridge cavity and then to the pickup cavity. But with this route in place, it just made it so much easier to fill the wires in that Fenders just decided to go with this route and to make assembly that much easier. In fact, on many no-casters that do have this route, you can see the drilled hole that goes from the neck pickup route to the bridge pickup route. Inside this wall, you'll see the hole.
In the cutaway, up towards where the neck joins onto the body, there's always this little lip, which was part of their, I think was part of the template.
Part of their tooling or their routing template. As you can feel it, it's actually a little like ski jump almost that exists right in there.
Very common in all 50s and early 60s.
So if it doesn't have that crispness, then it looks like it could have been resanded.
Well, it becomes suspicious, you know?
Yeah, suspicious. That's
Anything you want to do is to try and find suspicion over whether or not it's been tampered with, or somebody's potentially passing it off as original, even though it may be conformed to the color or to the certain style of finish that they did. There's other telltale giveaways, which Shag and I are hopefully going to be able to cover for you.
Here's the bottom of the neck pickup. Notice the screws. The screws are... this guitar uses largely flathead screws. Matter of fact, I think the whole thing is flathead screws. By 52, they started using a mix.
Right.
They were phasing in Phillips head screws. But this is a partially, I mean, here there's no threads. Here there are threads. And then there's a spring that goes around the screws. The spring here is still in the body. But this is what holds the neck pickup in place. Notice the metal cover that goes around the phenolic bakelite or a phenolic plastic fiber
base of the pickup and then a grounding wire that connects the cover to one of the wires. So if you look at the route, I don't know, can you get in there, Norm? You can see the spring, how it's stuck in there. A lot of people also wonder why Tellys have this little pocket right here, and this is to expose, for easy adjustment, the truss rod. They put that little route in there. But that's the bottom of the pickup. Control cavity is right here. Can you see that, Norm? Okay, and you notice we've got a three-way switch with a fiber base right here, and a capacitor, and the two potentiometers. And there's a method to actually date the potentiometers. Usually, like the first 3 digits is the manufacturer code for the potentiometer, and the following 3 or 4 digits is the year and date code. Okay, now on this one, for example, it's pretty hard to see. I don't know if I can show you. We're going to try. Norm, can you get in here? I can't bend the guitar too much. You can see it says 250, and then the
which is the value of the potentiometer, 250 K.
Right, and then you've got a manufacturer of 304, and 304 is what? Stack pole. And then you've got 10, looks like 109. So this would be 09 is the week, and 1 is the year. So 1951, 09 is the 9th week, and 1951 is when the pot was manufactured. One thing to look for on original Telly bodies is this corner right here. It has a much flatter edge right here compared to this side, which is much rounder. I suspect this may be because the nail hole is typically in this area, but if you're looking for a bogus Telly body, most people do not pay attention to this detail where this edge right here is much flatter than the rounder edge over here. This is the bottom of the switch tip on the Telly. Both the top hat and the round style switch tip should both say DAC-aware, as can be seen at the top edge of the bottom of this switch tip.
Our broadcasters generally don't have that channel route.
Not always, but some.
Not always,
often.
but some. Some do, and would obviously be the later ones.
How do you downgrade if things have been replaced? Let's say a cap has been replaced or a pot's been replaced. How do you start
we'll get to that in terms of values. I think at this point we should,
or even its condition. How do you determine it?
What we do usually, what I do, and I think Shaggy's the same, is you work backwards when you're evaluating a guitars for originality and then a subsequent value, and that includes the condition. We usually start with the assumption that it's completely original, 100%, and then we work backwards in terms of that.
Okay, now here is the pickup removed, and you can see the route and the route shape. You can also notice that there is another nail hole, and the nail hole is right here. Okay, so while the nail holes are present, the pick guard or the bridge looks good, and you can see the bottom of the pickup.
Copper plate on this one.
The copper plate is they'll either be copper or steel, and they are required for grounding. So if you don't see that, it's probably a newer or replaced pickup, or at least it's been monkeyed around with.
So there's no dating on any of that.
Well, so in later Tellys, there'll be a date in here.
Yes.
But on this guitar, the date is in the neck pocket. We'll talk about that when we remove the neck. Now notice the saddles on the bridge are brass. Okay, and the bottoms of them are flat. Okay, and the reason why they're flat is to allow the saddles to go down more. Early saddles are on S-Class wires, on S-Squires and broadcasters. The early ones in 1950 were made out of a different material.
Right, they're usually steel.
So when did dating start in that area?
I like to start on the first date with a nice little kiss.
Yes. Well, I always thought you were looking to go to home base.
Not on the first date.
Now, in that hole over there, how do you date that hole? When did it start?
That hole's pretty old, but it hasn't seen a lot of screws.
So you got me there.
Is it running, Norm?
Yeah.
On these early pickups up to about the end in 1951, there's little notches in the fiber pickup base. There's a notch here and a notch here. And what these are little notches for the windings from the pickup windings to go to the rivets where the wires actually attach. And you'll see this, we're going to show you a late 1951 Telly, and you can see it real obvious on that guitar too, but you can see it on this Nocaster, these little notches. Later pickups, later flat pole pickups won't have that. Like, here's a later pickup This is a flat pole 50s pickup, and there is no notches here. So this one's, you know, 52 or later. Another kind of interesting thing on these pickups is if you flip up the copper plate, you can see that there's a piece of masking tape over the magnet poles on the bottom of the pickup's base. And the reason they did that was to shield the poles from the copper base. Also, in 1965, when they went to a gray bottom, they also would write the date that the pickup was made or wound right on this base. Okay, this is the back plate. Note, there's no serial number because it's on the bridge plate. They didn't start putting serial numbers on the neck plate until 1954. Notice the screws are slot head. Okay, I'm going to pull these guys out. And you can see the finish under that. Now, Norm's going to zoom out, and we're going to show the neck removed here.
This is like doing surgery.
Okay.
You have to be careful.
Yeah, it's like you're doing a lobotomy on that poor guitar.
Okay, now here you can see the actual date. The guitar is dated 3/21/51 with initial of TK. TK is very, very popular initial. Taddeo.
No, that's TG.
Oh, that's TG. Sorry. This is TK. TK, not TG. But anyways, the date is 3/21/51. These right here, these shims, these are not original. No. Somebody added those. Sometimes you will see a fiber shim here that's straight on this edge and slightly rounded on this edge. Right. Those are original, but this guitar didn't have one.
Let's talk about the initials in there. Does it matter whose initials in a guitar?
No.
Did they do?
No.
What did they do? Did they do assembly, finishing? What did they do?
Yeah, there was designated
craftsmen for different jobs.
One of them is TG, who was Taddeo Gomez, whose very popular initials. Show up in a lot of neck pockets and a lot of necks, the ends of the necks, which we'll get to.
What was his? Do you know what his jobs were?
No, well,
he was a neck shaper. I think fundamentally he did a lot of neck shaping, finish shaping, because of course most of these were machine done and then finished.
He's a woodworker, is really what it comes down to. Okay, now
give his due, God darn it.
Notice that also there is finish in the entire neck pocket. There's no apparent, where there is missing finish, I can probably match up with finish on the back of the neck. As a matter of fact, if you look right here, I can see the lettering from the pencil date, and the finish matches the same marks that were removed here. That shows a real virgin. A real virgin, and you know that these two things went together right from the start.
Yes.
Okay, now Norm, if you zoom out a little bit. The neck date is the next thing that's often good to look at, and you can see here, what are the initials that you see there, Norm? Norm?
Let's see. TG.
TG, that's Taddeo Gomez. And here's the neck date, 2/7/51. Now, if you notice, the neck and the body date are a month apart. Okay, so that means that this guitar, the earliest we could really call this guitar is March 51.
Right.
Really, because it's the newest part that's on the guitar that makes it its birth date, I guess. But you notice the slot head on the truss rod adjustment. The slot will change to a Phillips by 52. But this guitar is pretty much all slot.
It's really interesting that they have dates written in pencil and that. I mean, you look at anything nowadays, everything is mass-produced. You wouldn't have a clue.
On the back of the neck, you can see the 4 holes from the screws, but you can also see a tooling hole right here. Always look for this tooling hole. It's always in the exact same position. Also notice the walnut truss rod cover, piece of wood that the way they did is they routed the neck, put the truss rod in, then put the walnut over it, and sanded it smooth. You can see it pretty much goes right, though sometimes you'll see a flat edge there.
Straight edge.
Yeah, sometimes you'll see a straight edge. This one's rounded. This one fits really nice. As the guitars became more mass-produced, that was a corner they cut because nobody would see it.
Yes.
But always look for that tooling hole.
So the pencil signatures and all that, how far does that go? How many years?
Right until 1962.
Okay, now the edge of the fret, you can see the tang, which is the part of the fret that actually goes into the wood, is very short. Today when you buy frets, tangs are never this short. They're much long, not a lot longer, but they're probably a good 10 to 20 thousandths longer. The other thing, zoom on out, Norm, the way Fender put these frets in is they didn't put them in like this, like Gibson. They slid them in from the side. That's why you never see rattly frets on Fender guitars is because they didn't damage the wood going in and out like this. They slid them in like this from the side. He had a machine that actually pressed them all in from the side, and that keeps the frets nice and tight. But if anybody refrets the guitar, they're going to probably refret it like this, and it'll makes the frets looser.
Yes, you see a lot of guitars are refretted that have little shards of the maple actually pulled out.
Right, out of the actual area. Because when people pull the frets out this way, it pulls the wood with them. And sometimes you'll see little edges of broken maple around the edge of the fret. Here's the back of the peg head. Notice the tooling hole. This is a screw right here, a screw hole for the actual tuner screw. But right there is a tooling hole. Another thing to look for is the way these holes are drilled. Fender started in actually like a step pattern. Like the first hole is tight to the tuner. You can see the tuner just barely fits in there, but then they had to open up the hole to fit the metal ferrule in. So if you see a hole that's one diameter all the way through the diameter of the ferrule, you know the neck has been messed with, or maybe the neck is not original. Okay, so another thing that we noticed is this guitar actually has two different kinds of tuners. They're both Kluson Deluxe, an earlier and a later variety. This one, I believe, is the earlier one that says, down the center it says Kluson Deluxe. It has no hole here, and it does not, and it says patent pending on the bottom. Then the later tuner is here, where there's no Kluson Deluxe down the middle, there's still no hole, and there's no patent pending on the bottom. Now this guitar uses both styles of these tuners, and is that original? Well, yeah, we believe it is. It's parts transitioned in and out. Fender isn't like some guy was looking at these things in 1951 going, oh, I don't know, this one says Kluson and this one doesn't. Should we put it on, Leo? It didn't work like that at all.
Leo being frugal and conscientious about parts and spending money, you'll definitely see through the transition of different models over the 15-year period that we're discussing that there's going to be inconsistencies that don't seem apparently right for that time frame, but can definitely add up to an original guitar, because he wouldn't waste parts just because they made that transition to, say, a different part. He may use up what he had until it ran out.
But then you also look at those and you see the consistency. They all have the same type of finish.
The patina is right. Everything else about them fits to that time frame, which is an early 1950 to 52.
They're all wearing. There's a little rust. Whatever it is, they're all similar.
Yeah, and again, we can reiterate this over and over again. Through time and experience, you have to add up the consistencies and weigh them against inconsistencies in determining a guitar's originality. Of course, the history of the guitar too, and knowing where it came from and whatever provenance it may have, is obviously going to help you a lot. This guitar, for example, Shaggy, was obtained from the original owner, and that doesn't always mean that something might not have been changed, but it's usually a good indication that if you have even old pictures or some there's one direct link to this guitar.
And I actually talked to the guy. I mean, I actually bought the guitar from the original owner and talked to him. And and one of the first questions I always ask is, has the guitar had any repairs or modifications? Now, a lot of times people aren't going to remember, like if they had it refretted or they had this done or they had that done. But a lot of times they do remember. And they'll give you details. Actually, sometimes they're blatantly honest because they don't realize that these little things are going to affect value or potentially affect value.
And they don't know what you're looking for to see if it's wrong. So it definitely helps.
Okay, another thing we want to talk about are the ferrules, the string ferrules that stop the string from pulling through the body wood. Now you can notice that these are flush. I can run my finger across them. They're not protruding from on top of the wood. And also notice that there is no finish on the metal ferrules. So the guitar was drilled for the ferrules, painted, then the ferrules were installed as the final assembly. If you see paint on top of the ferrules or ferrules sticking up, it's not original.
And now, when did they go to the non-flush ferrules?
1967. 1967 is where you see ferrules where they're up a little bit. So anyways, that's the end of our Nocaster. We're going to move on to a
1951 Telecaster.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Certainly. What have I got to lose?
Now we're going to take a look at a December 1951 Fender Telecaster. Remember, the Nocaster name is a collector's term. no-caster. That's what we call it. It's not what Fender called it. Fender called their guitar Telecaster since the spring of 1951, but they continued using the decals that just said Fender because Fender didn't want to throw away anything. So he took broadcaster decals and cut off the word broadcaster, so therefore it just said Fender, thus the no-caster. That all ended at the end of August 1951. They ran out of these broadcaster decals, and they got a new set of decals made that said Telecaster. So now, since about September 1951, the guitar is officially a Telecaster, and we're going to look at this December 1951 Tele.
Let's take a quick look at the 1951 Telecaster. Not really much difference between this guitar and the no-caster, other than this one says Telecaster on the peg head. And the serial number is 1452. The pickup is a flat pole pickup, and you can see the corrosion on the top of the poles. Now on the pick guard, you can see the clear coating and where it's excessively worn, except for the area underneath the strings. So the strings protected that area from being worn, but any part that was out in the open where the player's hands touched it really wore. And you can see how here the truss rod route, and we're going to also show the truss rod adjustment screw. Now notice that it's Phillips, it's no longer slot like on the no-caster. Okay, now here's the nail holes. Got the nail hole up on the horn and one by the neck pickup. We buzzed in on the one by the neck pickup. You can see that there's no paint in the nail holes, but there is kind of this whitish red rubbing compound.
You can see the bottom of the switch tip. That is not original. That's not how they looked. Here, I'll show you an original one off our other Telecaster. Here's an original one. How close can you get there, Norm?
You can see them.
Okay, if you look really close, you'll see there's like DAC writing and maybe a patent number on this one, on the original one. But you can see the difference between an original and a reissue. And then if you look at the tops, you can see this one here is an innie, and this one here is an outie. So you got an innie and an outie, but the innie and the outie don't matter. That's not signifying really anything because they made the original ones innie and outie. So you can't really determine much. You have to look at the bottom.
Okay, here's the control assembly. You can see the pots, but let's look at the three-way switch. There's the big wolf tone capacitor, and notice on the three-way switch that the bakelite insulator has angled sides and the CRL 1452 part number stamped into the three-way switch. Now I look at the pots a little closer in the brass knurled knobs. You can see there's a fair amount of corrosion on the plate, but the wiring looks all stock. And then here is the last nail hole by the control, and notice the flat side of the control cavity too, instead of the rounded edge. But there is our third nail hole. Let's put this back in here. Now let's take a look underneath the bridge. Maybe we can find the fourth nail hole underneath this. But look at it, notice the slot adjuster heads on the intonation screws. But you can see this stuff is really corroded. But that's okay. Yep, and there is the fourth nail hole right there. And look, it's got some rubbing compound in it too. But it's free of paint, which is really what we're looking for. Here's the bottom of the pickup. You can see the metal grounding plate and how it's attached to the pickup to complete the ground circuit from the strings to the ground. Note the notches in the pickup base for the string winding wires.
And on the side you can see the cloth wiring and also the rubber spring spacer. But it looks good. And now let's take the neck off. Here we go.
I wonder who EM is. We know who DG is, Tadeo Gomez. He's my hero. The best neck shaper Fender ever had was Tadeo Gomez. But the body and neck date are really close. They're within just a few days of each other. Now notice the D impressed in the base of the neck. This is seen from about 1951 to 54, not on all instruments, but often on the neck and sometimes in the neck pocket too. I do not know what the D means, but you see that D impression on a lot of these tellies. Here's the decal. Now we have the word Telecaster on there. And notice how thin and petite the decal is with the very thin black. And also notice on the E, the top edge of the E is very sharp, where reissues will be kind of rounded. There's the ferrules, just like on the Nocaster. No paint on the ferrules, and they're all level with the body. No surprises here. And then the neck plate, you can see on this one, we still have slot head screws on the neck plate, and a little bit of corrosion on there, but no serial number here because the serial number's on the bridge plate.
Were you in the Black Bottom Cafe on the night of February the 13th?
Certainly.
Okay, now we're going to show you a 52 Telecaster. This one I believe is summer of 52. And slightly some differences. Also notice this guitar came with a polishing cloth. Notice the spaghetti logo. They call it a spaghetti logo because of the very thin lettering style that Fender used. But it pretty much has the same thing. It came with a pack of original string wrapper and the original cord, but not the original strap. But notice the manufacturer. You want to talk about that, Colin? The manufacturer of the case?
Well, you can see here there's a small little sticker here that says the Bullwin Manufacturing Company in Costa Mesa, California. This is the company that made these cases for Fender in the early 50s for these thermometer cases and subsequently the poodle cases.
And both these cases have that marking. Now, what's some differences between this 52 and the Nocaster, the 1951? Weight, this one's lighter, but that will vary from guitar to guitar.
Right.
Weight it's all over the map. Some are heavy as can be and some are light as a feather. Yeah. This guitar is obviously in much nicer condition.
Right.
Norm, can you see that? You can barely see a little spot of wear here on the pick guard through the clear lacquer, but other than that, there's very, very little wear on this guitar. Even
finish is really nice.
Yeah, even on the neck there's very little.
You see there's much less darkening on the clear coat on this guitar.
Yeah, the color is much lighter. Also, this one obviously says Telecaster because now it is officially a Telecaster. The back is very similar. You can notice though that this guitar has changed.
It's a transition guitar with
Phillips. We got
both
Phillips
head screws and slot head screws.
Right. So here we got some slots. Here we got some Phillips. Yes. And on the pick guard we got slots, Phillips, slot, or slot, Phillips. So you got a mix here on this guitar.
Well, how is that like characteristic of models of that year?
Yes, it's just Fender using up the parts they had rather than just discarding them because they've changed to a different type of screw. And this transition is started in 52, and you'll see this almost right up until 53. You'll see a weird, sort of combination of screws on these guitars.
So would that be tougher to, if somebody did want to replace a screw, it'd be an easier thing to do because you could be fooled?
Well, to be honest with you, the slot head screws are much rarer to replace than the Phillips screws because after 1953, Fender used them for pretty much the next 15 years. And they were consistent in the style and the size of the screw, so it would be much easier on, say, an early 50s 52 or 53 Telecaster to replace it with Phillips screws, but much more difficult to replace it with the slot head screws.
Here's something a lot of people ask about pickups and how you can tell if they're original or not. This is an old Fender Telecaster pickup. Can you get pretty close on this, Norm? The one thing that's interesting is you notice that there's actually string that goes around the pickup. Okay, it goes around on all the sides, and then after the string is on the pickup, you can see almost like a wax coating, like the pickup was dipped in some wax. And that is correct, it was dipped in wax. And this is an early style pickup because the poles are flat. Right. So you've got a flat set of poles, like the 52 and the 51 both have the same
flat poles.
Flush to the top of the phenolic.
Right. Now they changed to a staggered pole, and they did that in
1955.
So a lot of guys like, for one reason or another, the older flush pickups. And of course this one also has the copper bottom and the cloth wiring. All these guitars are wired with cloth wiring up to about 1967, 1968. You see this cloth wiring. Okay, so no plastic PVC wiring, it's all cloth.
Which was also color coded. Between 1950 to 1952, these jack cups were milled brass and then chrome plated, and they're much heavier and thicker looking. In 1952 they went to a stamped jack cup. This is also it's a good thing to check on these early guitars, because this milled jack cup is obviously quite much rarer and pretty much impossible to reproduce these days. They're almost always going to see this one before you'll see this one. So that's this is the transition year between those two parts.
Now on the 52 Telecaster with the pressed cup, if you can see, I took out the nut that holds the jack plate in place, and you can see that the cup comes out very easily, and there really isn't any serrating on the side of the press cup, where the milled cup there is all like little grippers that hold this to the wood inside. And then in here you can see that there's like a metal bar that goes actually into the sides of the wood that holds the jack in place and that presses this together against the copper plate to hold it all together. One of the reasons Fender got away from the milled jack cup was because it was simply a press fit into the body. So this milled jack cup, as you can see, there's really nothing holding this in here other than the serrations around the edge of the cup and a press fit of the cup into the wood. So you can see my finger here on the inside. There's nothing in there to hold the cup in place, and these would get loose and fall out. Also, the whole idea behind milling the cup was more expensive than pressing it. Notice the walnut peghead plug on the 52 Tele is now more teardrop shaped compared to the rounder plug that was used on the 51 Nocaster. Here's the inside of the 52 Telecaster, and you can see the neck date and the body date in this photo. Here's the inside of the 52 Tele. I can see a nail hole right here, and I can see one clearly right there, and I can also see a nail hole over here. So all the nail holes are accounted for except for the one under the bridge. Also, if you notice, the pick guard does not have the can marks like the Nocaster had, but that's okay because they don't all have it. And then here is the control cavity and the pots and switch on the 52 Tele. Now this Telecaster has the old style wiring, which means that the last control right here, closest to the output jack, is actually a blend. It allows you to blend the neck and the lead pickup together. They stopped this wiring in late 52 and switched to the traditional, what's known as the 53 through 1967 wiring, where the last pot closest to the output jack was really a tone control. This style of Kluson tuner with no name down the center rib and the hole on the side of the casing was used from 1952 to about 1955. One very common problem on vintage Telecasters is blown pickups. And what I mean by blown is the little wires that wrap around the magnets will break internally and make the pickup go open. Now often the guitar will still work, it'll still make sound, but it'll be fairly thin. If you're buying a guitar through the mail or any other means, it's a good idea to check the pickup. Now you can remove the control cavity plate, and I'm using a digital multimeter set to an ohm rating of 20K, and I can put this right on the leads of the pickup. Now the lead pickup or bridge pickup will be anywhere from 6K to about 9K. That's 6,000 to 9,000 ohms. So I put one lead on the ground and the next lead on here, and this particular pickup registers 6.5K or 6,500 ohms. Now you can also test the neck pickup in the same manner, and the neck pickup should be about 5K to about 7.5K, and this one is 5.5K. So both of these pickups are good. Now if I received no reading on my digital scale, or it went up to like 20K, that would mean that the pickup is open. Here I'm going to test this pickup, which is actually out of the guitar, and you can see this Tele pickup registers 7.9K. So you can see there's a wide variance. The solder joints have kind of a gray look to them, like they're old, and they also, all the wiring and the solder joints look clean and fresh. There's no sloppy work here. Sloppy work would be an indication that the guitar had something done to it, or maybe parts were replaced. Shiny solder joints indicate that the solder joints were reheated. Maybe a pickup was removed and changed or rewound. These are all things to consider when looking at these guitars, that you want them to be as original as possible.
Well, me and my pals, we're musicians. We were tearing up some hot swing music in the orchestra. Gail over there was swinging her fans. Her sweetie, Kirk Robin, was inhaling a bottle of hooch at a table. And a hoofer by the name of Buck Wing was getting ready to shake his tootsies.
Okay, here we have a 1954, summer of 1954 Telecaster. And notice quite a few things right off. Obviously, it's got a white pickguard. During the summer of '54, they transitioned from black to a white pickguard.
So we got steel saddles on this one.
The serial number is still on the bridge plate. This one's 2592, which is a lower serial number than the 52 Telecaster, which is kind of interesting.
Why don't you swap them?
Because right around this era,
and make it right. They screwed up in the factory. You write it now. You write history.
In
maybe not.
This 54 that was right before they went to serial number on the neck plate. So this is one of the last ones with the serial number on the bridge plate, but it still has steel saddles instead of brass saddles, which is kind of interesting.
Which are not flat on the bottom by now. They're completely round.
They're completely round because the actual diameter of the saddle is narrower.
Yes.
It's not as big around, so they don't have to make the bottoms flat.
And you can even, on this particular guitar, you can see that these are early steel saddles, and on the sides of them, you can see where they were cut, because they were cut off of a piece of rod, which was then set with a screw.
Right, so you can see the bandsaw marks.
You can see the bandsaw marks on the sides of these steel saddles.
Another thing to notice on this 54 Tele is that the bridge saddle screws changed angle. That is, these height adjustment screws were formerly more straight up and down, and now they're at a slight angle. They stay at this angle until the Tele gets threaded bridge saddles around 1958. We still have the flat pull pickup, but notice we have a top hat switch now, which changed somewhere in 54, 55. This one has a top hat instead of the round switch.
We never talked about the knobs, which actually on these guitars are pretty consistent up until 1956. They're machined brass, that's chrome plated, and generally speaking, they're dome topped. I've seen different...
In here on this, Norm, can you get pretty close? Get close in on the knobs here. You can see how the tops are rounded.
The earlier knobs will, on first glance, look very similar, but the knurling on Broadcaster, Nodecaster, early Telecaster are heavier knurling and got softer in 1952, while still retaining that dome top appearance, which went to a flat top square in 1956.
So some other things on the guitar. Flip it over. Everything else, the ferrules is all the same. We got the stamp cut.
Yeah.
Yep. And
we got Phillips head screws on the plate.
Another thing that we can see on our 54 example that actually happened in 1953 is that the 12th fret dots widened. Before 53, the dots were about 1 inch apart, center to center. Now they're about 1 1/8 inches. So the dots widened just a little bit about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more, in 1953, and we can see that on our 54 model.
They're non-Kluson Deluxe, so they're no-line tuners.
There's no name, Kluson
No name
Deluxe.
on them, but they have the open back now on the sides.
So they have the hole drilled in the side for the
pegs. These were done until 1955 when they went to a Kluson Deluxe down the center with the open hole on the side. Phillips head screws all around.
The decal is pretty much the same.
Same.
And the round button string tree is pretty much the same.
And if you took it apart, it'd have a date inside.
Yes.
Oh yes. This guitar would have been also available in Blackguard in '54. So sometimes you'll, as Shaggy mentioned, this was a transition from mid '54, early to mid '54. Telecasters will still have the black pickguard.
Yeah, the white pickguard was transitioned in during the summer of '54, and was introduced at the summer of '54 NAMM music show.
Right.
So that's
probably a little change in color over the years. It's probably
We're gonna talk
brighter.
about this finish now.
No, I mean the pickguard would have been a little brighter, probably.
Oh yeah. It's yellowed a little bit.
I have a theory that the popularity of this guitar as it increased over the 50s, especially by 1954, I think Fender decided not only for cosmetic reasons to change to a white pickguard, but I think this pickguard plastic was much cheaper to manufacture than the black pickguards, which were sprayed and were made from a plastic that was much more brittle. So I think that was part of the reasoning behind it.
Less labor. They didn't have to clear coat. They didn't have to clear coat the white pickguard, so that's probably one of the key reasons they went to a white pickguard.
Right. You can see that there's a very similar color between the 52 and the 54. 54 is a transition year for color as well on Telecasters. They went from the traditional sort of butterscotch to a much more blonde,
whitish finish
in 54. You can also see on this guitar that there's a halo that appears around the outside edge of this. This is because Fender shot the finishes on the front and the back and then did the side spray, which as the guitar yellows is much more prominent. You can see this yellow sort of band around the side and around the top. And
it's like the sides are almost more opaque than the front is. So the front's more translucent and the sides are more opaque.
This is something you would definitely look for in a, especially 54 to 58 Telecaster. You want to see if it's
a halo.
You want to see a bit of a halo, even if it's in this kind of condition, which is quite good. You can still see that it's prominent even on guitars that are clean.
Here's the neck pocket on the 54 Tele. You can see the neck is dated 854, and the body, it's hard to see, but it looks like 754 in like a red ink. It's really difficult to see. It's under the blonde finish, but both the body and neck date are still present in the neck pocket. Here's the underside of the 54 Tele, and I can again nail hole, nail hole, nail hole, all present. Chiclet style paper capacitor, round style capacitor here. All this looks intact, but the neat thing is you can see how much the finish has yellowed here compared to the area underneath the pickguard, and just how whitish looking this guitar really was, and how the UV or smoking has really affected the finish on this guitar. It's kind of amazing that it's really gotten that yellowed. Another kind of interesting thing about this guitar is how much the pickguard is even yellowed. This side is really almost matches this finish, this color here, and then this side, look how white it is. It's really interesting. This guitar obviously saw a lot of UV or a lot of smoking.
Kindly speak English and drop the vernacular.
Vernacular? That's a derby.
Drop the vernacular.
Okay, this is a 1956 Telecaster.
In very clean condition.
Very clean. This would definitely be what we call 9+ out of 10.
I mean, this guitar is actually so original, it even has the original flat wound strings on it.
Yeah.
And you can see there's no wear up and down the neck. Bring it this way so they can see the fingerboard.
Now the finish in that is did it fade? Didn't fade? What happened
You
there?
can see they used a different clear coat.
Yeah.
The clear coat used on this 56 doesn't yellow as much as the older clear coat on this 54. But you can still see the
slight
halo, the slight halo that goes around the edge. Can you show that there, Norm? Can you get an eye in on that halo?
You have an idea what they used?
Well, they just sprayed, basically, I feel that they just sprayed more color on the edges.
No, I
of the
mean, what
guitar
did they
on the
change
sides.
their finishes?
Well, it's just a different brand, maybe a different brand of clear or clear. You know, lacquer evolves with time. Yellowing was not a desired effect of it, so they might have just been, you know, a newer type of lacquer.
This is much more translucent blonde as well. You can see much more of the grain in the ash. You can also see, which we haven't touched on at this point, but on the back of these bodies, you can see the tooling marks, which were used to set the bodies
When they
into
routed
the jig
them.
for routing the bodies.
Yeah, there's a little doweled hole right here. Can you get in on that, Norm? Doweled hole right where
So that would be a truer color.
This would be a perfect example of a mid to late 50s Telecaster finish in blonde.
But you see right here is the tooling hole. Can you see that, Norm? Okay, you can back it back out. And likewise, there's another one right here. Now you should see that on all Fender Telecaster bodies. If you look on this one, you can't see it as much because the paint is more translucent.
You can see
or,
the small
or
this
less
one here.
translucent. You can see this one, but this one I can't see.
You should usually always look for these two tooling marks on the back of the body. It's also
in addition,
indicated-
and we talked about the lip in the
Right.
in the neck
This
pocket
one's
too.
quite pronounced in this one. Some of them are slightly softer, some are more pronounced. Now the thing about this guitar too is it also covers a lot of the transitions which were made in late 55 on the Telecaster. Everything from the knobs which were dome knobs in 54, by now you've got a flat top knob that's square edged and is not made out of brass any longer. It's basically a steel cast knurled knob. We've got the top hat switch. We've still got steel saddles, but now, unlike the earlier saddles, which were almost like the starting saddles were unfinished, these are obviously a little bit more finished. They're
nickel plated.
Nickel plated. The edges of the sides are much more finished. I think they had, by this point, they had gotten to they've gone to a tooling company that had
They had done more finishing on the edges of the saddle.
Now, I'm not very knowledgeable on these, but look at your pick guards, and they just don't look right either. One is so
Right.
bright white,
Right.
and one is so tan, and
It's just the environment that the guitars lived in. This guitar obviously was, maybe more UV light, or maybe a more of a smoky environment. This
Right.
guitar basically sat under a bed and was never
Yeah.
used.
Yeah.
I mean, even the case that the guitar came in is nearly flawless. So, I mean, other than a couple scuffs, this guitar really didn't see any
This guitar
any
didn't
use.
see much playing wear at all.
Where this guitar did, you can see that there is some playing wear. You can see some wear here on the fingerboard.
Now the other thing, just kind of moving back to front, the pickup now has a staggered pole piece.
Can you get in on that, Norm? Can you show how the pole pieces are a different height?
The D and the G string are slightly offset. The other string pole pieces are still flush with the top, but the D and the G string are now offset. That started in late 1955. Moving forward, pickguard's the same, front pickup's the same. The routing underneath these is now established pretty much by this guitar. Nothing really changed there. You still have the diagonal route for the front pickup. All the screws now are Phillips head screws. No transition screws anymore. That includes
This guitar's all Phillips too, actually.
Right.
This 54.
peg head now. If you look at the decal, you can see it's exactly the same decal, but it's in a slightly different position. It's gone from a button retainer, we've got now what's called a butterfly clip retainer, which sits in front of the decal.
Or decal, depending on where you're from.
Well, where I'm from, it's a decal, but British, Canadian terms.
Aye.
Canadian speak.
Flip it over and show the tuners.
Now I just want to finish this off. In 1957, you will see the transition for the decal to be in front of the clip, but it's still behind the clip. This is a transition This could have possibly been a butterfly clip or a button retainer. They switched in 1956, somewhere
About the
around
summer, yeah.
about mid-56. So some you'll see with it, and some it'll be the other way.
To a layman like myself, these guitars don't really look like they've changed significantly.
Well, these are all minor details.
These are
No,
the
I know,
details
but
that
if you look at them, and to most people couldn't see a difference in these.
But that's why we're here. We're trying to dispel all those, questions and doubts and idiosyncrasies that some of these guitars have, which we can at least nail down to some specific dates. If we look at the tuners now, this is the final version of the tuners that were used from 1955 till 1965 when they
64.
64,
So they went to double line.
and then chrome plating. They're nickel plated. They have a single line Kluson Deluxe down the center, and
The words down this. That's
down
what the
the center.
single line means. Is the words actually spell out Kluson Deluxe down
Right.
the center of the tuner.
with the open hole on the side.
Yeah, with the hole for the peg. Also note the serial numbers here. Hoist yours up a little bit. Like this one, there was no serial number on the neck plate. Now we have a serial number starting in mid-54 on the neck plate.
Right. So
So-
this just missed it.
Right.
This one is now, and this pretty much we talk about the neck style on this guitar. This one's very much a V style neck, where when you put your hand around it, instead of unlike the earlier guitars, which we described as like almost like a C style neck or a round shaped baseball bat, they progressively starting in 1950, late 54, 55.
No, really, I don't see V-necks at all really in 55.
Soft V's in 54.
Yeah, 56 is pretty much the soft V. 57 is a strong V, and then by early 58,
Right.
the V-neck is gone.
Yes.
So the V-neck only really lived,
Couple of years, right?
yeah, a couple of years at most.
So this one's definitely it's a smaller V neck, but it's a strong V. You'll get some guitars from this period, especially 56 and 57, where the V itself is very strong, but the size of the neck might be either small or huge.
Right.
For that we have no reasoning. These
Other than the
guitars-
craftsman that made the neck and his attitude for the day.
Right.
But anyways, that's the 56 Tele. Here we have a set of Telecaster peg heads. We have the 51 Nocaster, the 52 Tele, the 54 Tele, and the 56 Tele. And the one thing is, even though all the peg heads look pretty much the same, one thing that Fender did in late 55 and early 56 is they made the peg heads much sharper on the edges. So this edge here, from the face of the peg head to the side of the peg head, is much sharper on the 56 than it is, say, on the 52. Fender probably did this to save a step in the final shaping, but if you look close, you can see on this 54 how this edge is much more round compared to this edge on the 56, which is a lot sharper. Here's the 56 Tele, and you can see that, interestingly, the neck date was written upside down. I've never really seen that before. 1056 upside down, and the pocket, the neck pocket, doesn't have a date there. It's probably underneath the lead pickup. Here's underneath the 56 pick guard, and you can definitely see that the body date was written underneath the lead pickup. There it is, 9-56. So they moved the body date back there. The rest of it looks pretty good. Wow, even the rubber spacer, or the rubber spring on the Telecaster pickup, look how fresh that thing is. It really does look like surgical tubing there. But really, this thing's in beautiful condition, even on the interior. See no issues here. On the 56 Tele, right here is the one right by the neck pickup. We can clearly see it right there. And then, of course, there's one on the lower bout. That's right there. There is one underneath the neck, or underneath the bridge pickup. But interestingly, I can't find one here. There's usually one right by the screw for the control cavity, but in this case there is none. So all I can conclude is maybe the nail hole was overcome by the control cavity screw. It must have corresponded to the same hole. But no surprises under the pick guard. If you notice, the the finish is not yellowed at all on any of the surrounding areas. The color under the pickguard is identical to the color outside of the pickguard. This has to do with the condition of the guitar. This guitar really hasn't seen much use or much UV rays. Also, the newer finishes that Fender was using by about 1954, 1955, this whiter look, the clear coat just did not yellow as much.
Okay, so here we have a 57 Telecaster. This one's pretty much in what I would call near mint to mint condition. I mean, it's essentially unplayed. There's a little bit of, which we'll show you later, there's a little bit of
nice case too.
Wear on the back, but yeah, I mean, it's as clean as I think you're ever going to see. Fender was actually quite conscious of weight, balance, and this one's what I call, I guess, a sort of average weight.
I'd call it light, in my opinion. I call it a lightweight.
Yeah.
The body is a single piece of ash. That is, I can't see any seam lines where there were multiple pieces of wood glued together. The only wear effectively on this guitar is there's a little bit of buckle in this area here where the guitar was, was played with a belt buckle or something right in this area.
I call that worm wear.
The worm wear. The serial number is kind of interesting. It is a dashed serial number. It's a 5-digit number. This one's minus sign and then 21,000 something or other.
Right. 57. You'll also see the serial numbers where they start with a 0, and then the numbers.
A 0 and then a 5-digit number.
Right.
The ferrules are the same as our 56, not flush. Painted, flush. The jack cup is the same. The pick guard and the pickups are the same. The control assembly is the same. The bridge and the bridge saddles are the same. The neck shape's a little different. It's a stronger V shape. It's still a fairly large back shape, but it's strong. It definitely has that V feel to it. The tuners are the standard single line Kluson Deluxes, just like it was used on the 56. Under the G and D tuner, you can see the tooling hole is still there, and then the single line Kluson Deluxes have actual patent numbers on the bottom side. Here's the 56 and the 57 Telecaster. Note that in late 56 they changed the position of the Fender Telecaster decal. On the 56, the string tree is about 3.5 inches from the beginning of the nut to here, and the decal is towards the nut. In 57, the string tree is about 2.5 inches from the nut, and the decal moved to this side of the string tree. Okay, the neck date's 9/57. What's that funky 4 in the neck pocket there,
Yeah,
Colin?
I've never seen that. Definitely original. Could be, who knows? Could be a lot number, like part of a lot that they did. Although I know Fender never really made any notations for that stuff.
Okay, the distance from the top of the truss rod to the top of the fingerboard is about 1/8 of an inch. That's fairly consistent on all these guitars.
So there's our
tooling
hole for the neck, and you can also see the remnants of the finish on the neck match up on the body. Okay, so you can see here under the guard,
glossy on the back side of the guard.
Glossy under the guard there, single layer guard obviously. You can see that these nail holes are still in the same positions
as we saw on the earlier ones.
We'll see in 58 that they actually move.
Show them under the lift the bridge.
Under the bridge here.
And then we got a date. What's the date? 8/57.
8/57. It's a month
Can you see a nail hole?
Right by the last screw here.
You can see the nail hole.
Get in there. You can see a nail hole right there, just almost intersecting it.
Now lift up the control plate.
Control plate.
Really cool on the control plate.
Right in the corner.
Yeah, you can see it right in the corner.
Yeah, you can still see that the back end on this the cavity is still squared off more than on the front, rounded out. And then our.
Can you see the pot dates at all? Look at the paper capacitors.
Yeah, these are right.
Yep, and the 3-way switch still has the angled bakelite sides.
CRL 1452. No, the pot dates are they're
Obscured by solder.
which is pretty common actually on these because they're still dated on top of the pots,
Right,
not on the sides, which we'll see later on.
right.
You can also see, just as a nice little sidebar again, that in Fender's way of trying to conserve as much possible paint as he could, there's no paint in the middle of this.
Yeah, because it's under the pick guard. There's no white.
There's no
it's
white
kind of like a
paint.
natural ash look.
Yes.
Because there was no reason to paint it there.
Right. It's very, very subtle.
Show me the bottom of the pickup, and of course the
Color-coded.
cloth wiring.
So here we are with a 58 Telly. We can pretty much say the same thing about this as we did with the 57 Telly.
Take her out.
Everything's
Largely the same.
everything's pretty much the same. The two things off the top that we noted are the bridge saddles, which changed to a slotted style.
Threaded. These are
thread.
like threaded rods.
Right.
That clearly changed in 58.
And the neck contours changed in 58, slowly starting in early 58. Started to get far less V-shaped, much more sort of a boat shape. And then as the year progressed, they got shallower and shallower and even slightly tapered from the front of the neck to the back. So I think this one's somewhat early 58. The other thing that changed in 58 is actually they went from having the strings go through the body to what they call a top loader, where the strings actually go through the top of the bridge.
Right, they're actually drilled back here, and the strings, instead of them having to drill the holes through the body, and instead of them using these ferrules in the back, the strings load through the top.
Much less desirable to most Telly players.
Affects the sound dramatically.
Changes the string tension and the tone of them. This one's obviously early enough in 58 that it didn't make that transition. So
Right, not every 58 is going to be a top loader.
right,
And not every 59 either. I mean,
Right.
it was kind of like a mix they had going on.
right.
But the top loaders became predominant. Here's the serial number. Notice it's still a 5-digit number, but it's preceded with a 0. This is very typical in 58 and even 57 models. Show that style of serial number. Still has the single line Kluson tuners. No surprises there. The neck date is June 58.
Nam Show 58.
Yeah, no surprises in this pocket at all. Once again, the from the top of the truss rod to the top of the fingerboard is about 1/8 of an inch.
Okay, here you can see again we have our single layer guard, the shiny back.
Yep,
as
shiny
we would
back.
expect.
Yep.
And the same slight halo, I call it, I guess, in the middle here where there's no finish.
Yeah, where it's just natural.
Just
There's no
natural,
blonde color.
Yeah.
What they've done on the nail holes, instead of the nail hole being here, it's now actually positioned inside the cavity. And then the one on the horn is completely gone. They're not using that at all. So they're kind of doing a three-legged stool. And then under here, instead of having the nail hole by the lowy string over here, it's actually here inside the cavity. And likewise, here, they've positioned it so it's actually at an angle here. So what they've done is, instead of having them on the top of the guitar, they're actually inside each of the cavities. Why they did this, I don't know, but they definitely did this, and they only did it on the Telecaster. They didn't do it on the Stratocaster.
Right.
The nail hole that moved from up here to inside the cavity. So here's the date, 6-58, and
Same as the neck. So here's our control cavity.
the capacitors have changed.
Yeah.
Instead of being that waxy paper capacitor, they're now the white paper capacitors.
Right. And the dates on the pots are on the side of the pot now. I'm not quite sure when that changed. Obviously, the 57 we had, the pot dates were still stamped on the top of the pots.
What are the pot dates?
The pot dates on this one, 304, which is stack pole, and then 807. So it's 7th week 58. Three-way switch is our CRL 1452, so you'd expect. Okay, there's our hump, which we always like to see in the cutaway there.
Yeah, it's definitely there. There's the patent number tuners, and the tooling hole on the back of the neck.
Got it?
'59 Telecaster, and I love this one.
Okay, here we've got a 1959 Telecaster Custom. This is an unusual guitar in that Fender is now putting a band of plastic called binding around the top edge and bottom edge, or the top and bottom of the guitar. And you also notice the body is sunburst. It's no longer blonde. Now this was a custom guitar, custom Telecaster, and it also has the green nitrate pickguard.
Right. This is like the deluxe version of a Telecaster. This came out in mid-59. This guitar is actually
very early.
The earliest one I've seen personally. It's almost, it has a couple things on it that almost
are unusual,
yes.
Such as the shape of this cutout here is slightly different than the shape on this guitar.
Yeah, I think they were trying to work out how they were going to do these bound bodies. The other significant difference is this body is made of alder, where the standard body wood for Telecasters was ash. On the Telecaster Custom, they used alder.
And the reason they did that was only because of the finish. They used, whenever Fender made a blonde guitar, they used ash for the wood. And I don't care what guitar it was, if it was blonde, it's ash. Where Sunburst, they didn't want to spend the money. The ash was harder to work with, harder to finish. Alder was cheaper and easier to finish, so if they use a Sunburst finish, they like to use alder, except on early Strats, and we'll come back to that.
So I will mention that there are some exceptions to the early Sunburst finishes that were used by Fender on some Telecasters. I owned a 55 Telecaster, which was finished in two-tone Sunburst, which we'll get to the color of this in a minute, but it was finished in the standard two-tone Sunburst in an ash body. These were really rare guitars. They also made a batch of them in 1957 with two-tone Sunburst on ash bodies, and but they pretty much are a rarity compared to this standard model, which came out in 1959.
But anyways, another thing to notice on this guitar is the serial number. Notice that it is, Norm, if you come right in here, the serial number is on the bottom of this neck plate on this 59 model. They only did that basically for 1959, and not all neck plates have that. They're usually across the top, not the bottom. And sometimes the neck plates are double stamped, which means on the other side of the plate there is an entirely different serial number, and usually on the top side. So I don't know how they determined which number to use or which way to flip the plate, but I think it had to do with the chrome plating and how the plate was finished and which side was recessed.
Right.
I think they just misstamped them.
Right, and then just reused them.
And then reused them and just, showing the one thing. But also, notice the pickguard. Talk about the pickguard here.
Well, this is the first year that Fender used what's now called a nitro guard.
Or nitrate.
Nitrate guard. It basically refers to the type of plastic that was used. It's a 3-layer guard.
And this is cellulose. Cellulose, opposed to this, which is a vinyl material. This is cellulose.
And what they did was, it's basically a compound of a white or cream, black and cream, and what it does is it gives the appearance of being slightly greenish, and what that is basically the black
felting through. By mid-1959, Fender had made some changes to their pick guards. This is the older 5-screw thinner pick guard that was used from mid-59 and earlier. It then transitioned on standard Telecasters to a thicker single-layer pick guard. See how it's thicker? That's now used 8 screws with an additional screw here, here, and here. Now these were used on standard blonde Telecasters in some custom colors. But then in 1959, they also came out with the custom Telecaster and the custom Esquire, and they used a 3-layer white, black, white nitrate celluloid pickguard, also with the additional 3 screws to have a total of 8 screws. This celluloid nitrate 3-layer pickguard was also used on some standard Telecasters finished in custom colors. Also, all these All these custom tellies had a rosewood fingerboard.
This would be a perfect example of a slab rosewood board, where the fingerboard itself is a slab of rosewood, Brazilian rosewood, which was applied to the top of the maple, and then the radius of the board was done. This was done until 1962.
Mid-62?
Mid-62.
Actually, August 62 started what's known as the veneer board. Now, what they mean by slab is this bottom edge here is sanded flat to mate to the maple neck. Another thing they did is they changed the dot material. These dots are what's known as a clay dot. In fact, they're not actually clay, but with time, the dots become kind of an earth-colored, dirt or clay colored, hence that's why people call them clay dots.
Cap that off, when you have white dots, you'll have white side dots. We never mentioned this, but on black dots, you'll always see black dots on the side.
The decal, as we call them in America, we call them decals. You can see that it says Custom Telecaster, and that the type font for Custom Telecaster is slightly different than the Telecaster on this guitar.
You'll also notice that the decal is in front of the butterfly clip now.
So it's moved.
It's been moved.
I got a question.
See, the clip actually came closer to the nut,
Right.
and the decal, not the decal, but the decal was moved back.
That was started in 1957.
Okay, the bridge on this guitar is slightly different. Notice the saddles now are what's known as threaded saddles. So
Right.
instead of using a smooth dowel, they used a threaded rod to hold the saddles in place. This is a nice, it doesn't look as good, but the strings sit in the threading nice so they don't move around. In 1959, one thing that's very unpopular about these guitars is often they have what's known as a top-loading bridge. That is, the strings do not go through to the back of the guitar. If you flip over some 59 Esquires and Tellys, often you will not see these ferrules here. There'll be nothing there. And the reason is that they're actually feeding the strings through the bridge and anchoring the balls on this side of the bridge. This guitar, tell them.
This particular guitar is threaded through the body, but they used a top loader bridge, and we know that because if you look at the side of it, you can see where the holes were drilled.
For each string.
For
You
each
can see
string.
6 holes right here, where this bridge does not have that.
These bridges, and they only did that. They did that in 1958, latter part of 58 and 59 on Telecaster.
Pretty much 59, yeah.
Yeah, you had a 58.
Yeah,
I
there's
remember that
58s with top loaders, that's right.
It was obviously unpopular then. It does change the tonal qualities as well as the string tension on that year. So they changed back to the standard.
Yeah, they generally don't sound the same and they don't feel the same. So Fender only did it for about a year and then switched back to the through-the-body strings.
But here's another example again of where Fender wouldn't just not use the part up; they just used it, and
even though it was drilled, they still used it, because they didn't want to throw out anything. The router hump on the Custom Telecaster is still there, but it seems less pronounced than on the non-custom versions of the Telecaster. Starting around 1958, the neck profiles started to get much flatter, and they progressed to get flatter and flatter until about the end of 59, when they were almost like paper thin. I'm talking about in this direction. The necks got really, really flat and thin feeling in 1959. The body date is 5/59. And some other interesting things on this guitar is that Fender switched the position of the nail holes. Normally we would see nail hole here, here, and here, and in the control cavity right here. But on this guitar, starting in 1958, and on the Telecaster, Fender changed the position of the nail holes. Now we have a nail hole actually in the route right here next to the date. And so one nail hole here, the nail hole up here is in the truss rod route between the neck and the pickup, and sometimes you'll even see it right in the base of the neck cavity itself. This nail is completely abandoned, they don't use it anymore, and then the last nail is driven into the side of the control cavity on this side right here. So for some reason Fender felt they had to move the nail holes. Notice the sunburst finish on the sides of the guitar too, how it's a very translucent brown. Here's the tone capacitors on the Custom Telly Notice the white chiclet style tone capacitors, which are different than the earlier brown colored ones. Single line Kluson Deluxe tuners. The tooling hole on the back of the body can be readily seen through the sunburst finish. Likewise, the second tooling hole can also be seen near the strap button on the back of the body. This was the strap that was included with most Fender guitars from about 1955 all through the 60s. It's known as a Bobby Lee style strap. The buckle was the only thing that really changed much.
What's the matter with you?
This is a 1962 Telecaster, and a couple things that are different. Again, we still have the slab rosewood fingerboard on this guitar, but the pickguard is different. The pickguard is a thicker white plastic. The finish on this guitar, flip that over, you can really see the difference.
Much less opaque.
Yeah, look at this. Here you can see how translucent this is, and you can see the grain. Over here, it's much more difficult to see the grain.
Right.
So these guitars aren't nearly as pretty as the 50s models.
Much thicker finish on them. Color's even different too. It's a little more banana yellow in my experience than this sort of blonde Telecaster finish. This guitar is interesting too because even though it's a 62, it's still using up a bridge that's a top loader bridge. So obviously I think Fender had made a move to change to a top loader Telecaster, and then when they changed their mind, they had all these bridges that had already been made for them and just used them up until they ran out. The other difference you can see on this guitar was the pickguard is this one has extra screw holes. These earlier guards tended to warp over time, and
they added additional screws. So
right.
This one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Right.
So they added them here.
And I believe that they did that in 1959 as well when they made the transition through to this style of pickguard.
Now show the peg head on this. You can see the logo is different on this guitar.
We can do it that way?
Yeah, let's do it this way.
All right, wow, mine's bigger than yours.
Everyone's is.
Here you can see the peg head on this one. Now you have the Fender logo, not only the position, but there is now patent numbers on the decal. So they actually did change the decal. Are you in on that, Norm? Good. But
you still with us, Norm?
Yeah, you're still with me. All right.
We should make mention too of the fact that when they went to a rosewood fretboard in 1959, they eliminated the back skunk stripe, which we call the walnut strip, because they didn't have to load the truss rod into the one-piece necks on the maple necks in the back.
They loaded it from here.
Loaded them on the top.
The 62 Tele has a fairly nice neck back shape, much thicker than the 59, because it progressed out. From 59, it was really paper thin, and then 60 got a little thicker, 61 got a little chunkier than that, but 62 is a nice shape, and it basically maintained this neck thickness or even up into the late 60s. Dot spacing on the 62 Tele is about 1 inch center to center. This will change in about 63, where it'll narrow down slightly. Another thing different on the 62, which actually happened around 1961, is that the neck screws changed just a little bit. This is from our 57 Tele, and this is the original screw to the 62, and you can see how the 62 screw is threaded all the way up, where the 57 screw is not threaded from the head to about 3/4 of an inch up. This guitar is still using the single line Kluson Deluxe tuners, the same tuners that was used up to about 1964. The 62 Tele is still using threaded style saddles, and notice the 6 holes behind the 3 adjustment screws for the top loading style bridge, even though this guitar has strings through the body. Strings are through the body, and you can see the finish on the back is a lot less translucent and much more banana colored than the 50s blonde finishes. Inside of the 62 Tele, once again, there are no nail holes present on the top surface of the guitar, but you can see a nail hole right here in the rear pickup cavity, and also right here, actually in the neck pocket. Often they're in this truss rod route, but this one's actually moved back a little bit in the neck pocket. No nail hole used here. Nail hole right here in the side of the control cavity, completing the third leg of the three-legged painting stool. Pickup is largely unchanged, still has the copper bottom and the rubber grommets, or the rubber springs shown right here, which are actually surgical tubing used as springs. Fender used those right up to about late 1964, and you can see the string that goes right around the pickup right here, that goes around the pickup windings, and the cloth-colored wire, the cloth-covered wire going to the pickup itself. The body shows no date at all, which is pretty common for 1962 and later Fenders. Starting around 62, they really stopped doing body dates on most of their instruments. But notice the neck date. The 3 means the style of neck, 3 indicating Telecaster. MAR is March. 62 is the year, and B is the neck width. Fender made the neck width in several different widths, A being the narrowest, B being the normal 1 5/8, C being wider, and D being an almost classical guitar style width neck. Notice that we still have a slab board fingerboard here, and by the way, on these neck dates, starting in March, they stopped writing them in with pencil and now started stamping the end of the necks with this rubber ink stamp, and you see that rubber ink stamp right up to the late 60s. The 3, people always confuse that as being the day, when in fact it just means that it's a Telecaster neck. The writing on the volume pot can be seen right here, and there's an actual manufacturer and date code. There's 304, which stands for the manufacturer, 304 is Stackpole, a dash, and then 6218. So the 62 means the year, and the 18 is the week. So this pot was made the 18th week of 1962 by the Stackpole Company. Notice that disc capacitors are now being used on the control panel instead of the paper chiclet style. The router hump is still very present in the 62 Tele. I can still definitely feel it there, though it may not show up well on the camera. It's definitely still there. The recessed notch that's right here in the body was used on the Telecaster to the 70s. And then once the 70s came, the body style changed so that this edge came up all the way here. So all this was filled in with body.
Then he smacks him on the head like that.
Whoa!
Then he pokes his coconut into the letterpress. Ain't like that. Then he says, I'll squeeze the cider out of your Adam's apple. Then he gives him the works like this. And he keeps turning and twisting.
So Dave's got his 65 Tele here that we're going to take a look at. And the one interesting thing he has is this original style case. Tell us about the case, Dave.
Well, it's a blow molded case of actually like a plastic material. I've hardly seen any of these at all. Unfortunately, when I bought the guitar, it didn't come with the original case, and I found this. Now, from what I know of, these things were used primarily for export or...
Yeah, and on the higher end instruments, like which at the time was the Jazzmaster and Jaguar.
That's right.
And so yeah, I mean, I've only seen a couple of these in my whole life, and it's kind of interesting. Here, so flip it up. Let's see the little Fender, the little Fender logo here.
Right here, it's that same tailed Fender logo that they put on.
It's kind of like the Transition logo.
No, this is the same like stenciling of a logo. It's actually engraved in the plastic. It's molded right in the plastic, and it's like almost like a gold or a silver tint to it, but it's just exactly like they would put on the amplifiers. And I got some crazy sticker over here, but if you take a look at the inside of the case, real similar to a 50s case, there were center pockets on either side, both opening up, red plush lined, and as I said, I'm not sure exactly if they put Telecasters in here. Typically, you saw the offset body guitars in here, like a Jazzmaster or a Jaguar, and I would think more appropriate for a Jazzmaster because of the longer scale, where the Jaguars had a shorter one, and the headstock is cut out larger that could accommodate either the small Tele headstocks or the larger ones. Very rare, and I thought this was a nice addition to this piece here, since I think they were used in the early 60s.
Yeah, since 63 to 65.
Early 65,
right.
and this guitar is in very early 65.
Okay, let's talk about the guitar.
Okay.
Why don't you show us the guitar?
Okay, how do you want me to just hold it
just
up?
pick it up. Just pick it up and. Okay, so we've got a 65 Tele. Did you say it was early 65?
Yeah, I believe the neck date is, which we'll find out again. I had this apart a long time ago. February of 65.
Now, interestingly, it still has the thick single-layer pickguard, which they actually transitioned out in late 64 to a white tri-layer guard. But this one still has the original, which is fine. I mean, that Fender used parts that they had laying around, so they used what they used. And this one just happens to have the older style pickguard. And on the logo here, it's a standard transition style. Oh no, it's
a spaghetti.
Yeah, spaghetti. It is.
And that's what makes this guitar very unique. I think the other thing that you'll notice about the guitar, in addition to the spaghetti logo and the thick single ply white guard, is it's more of a white finish than a creamy blonde. And I've seen 65 Teles that had the yellow blondie look, where this is much more like the latter 50s and very early 60s Teles that was much more of a white finish. And it's it's a piece of ash too. Veneer board, of course. And
here, flip it over. Let's see the back. What's anything on the back?
Okay, and it's an L plate. Of course, a little bit of belt wear, but again, the whiter finish versus the yellow cream that you will typically see in the middle to late 60s.
Right. Yeah, this one's more whitish, but that's that's fine. It looks good, and we're gonna open this guy up. Oh yeah, let's look at the tuners on it. Let's look at the back side.
Double line Clousons for the tuners.
Yes, double line.
Which would be right for the period.
Yep.
And the other thing on the front of the guitar, down at the saddles, they're the threaded saddles of the period as well.
Oh yeah, and the staggered pull pickup.
Yeah, and now I believe we talked about this in the playing end of it. The wiring would have been your neck pickup with a bass tone.
Yeah, with the capacitor.
When I got this guitar, it had already been changed, and I would have changed it out anyway. I use the guitar as a playing instrument, and it doesn't bother me.
So you put
the
more modern wiring style.
Because I use, when I play out, I use these two together for a lot of the funky stuff and the Memphis and the Detroit soul stuff, and you got to have that sound with a Telecaster.
Dot spacing on the 65 Tele is about 7/8 of an inch, because that narrowed down from 1 inch center to center in about mid-1963. February 65 is the neck date, and there's no body date, at least not in the pocket. We're going to look for the body date elsewhere. But no surprises here, pretty much what we were expecting.
Yeah, the only thing is point out the pearl dots on the neck.
Yes, pearl dots.
Versus the clay
Yeah,
dots.
no longer has clay dots, which went away about this era. They started using the pearl, the genuine pearl dots. Notice the veneer rosewood fingerboard, where the bottom of the rosewood, where it glues to the maple, is now curved. This transitioned in about August 1962, replacing the thicker slab rosewood board. Here's the control assembly. It's had some wiring changes, but the pots date are 304 65 20. So the 304 is stack pull, and then the 20th week of 1965. We had the bridge off, and there's no date under there. Of course, there's no nail holes seen in here because the nail holes were abandoned in late 64. In late 1965, early 1966, Fender changed from Brazilian rosewood to Indian rosewood. And here, this fingerboard is Brazilian rosewood, and this one is Indian. I know it's difficult to tell, but the Indian rosewood is lighter in color, and the grain is very, very straight. The Brazilian rosewood is much darker in color and richer looking, and if you look closely, has more interesting grain patterns. Though this piece of slab rosewood isn't entirely all that interesting, it is just prettier, richer, and deeper looking than the Indian version.
Get on.
Now here's an oddball sort of guitar that Fender brought out in 1968. This is a Fender Telecaster thin line. This was, I guess this was their attempt at trying to capture some of that acoustic semi-hollow market.
330 Gibson 335
yeah.
model.
So it came out in '68. It was available in a ash body or mahogany body. These are both ash bodied. With what we call the mother toilet seat pick guards.
Yeah, which is a perloid pick guard.
They still have the standard Telecaster electronics with single coil pickups. In 1971, they went to a humbucker in the front and, and a single coil in the back.
Far less desirable.
This is the much more desirable model. You can see that these are both examples of the maple neck and the rosewood board.
The maple neck is far more popular. Personally, I like the feel of the rosewood and the sound of the rosewood on this model.
In 1968, they stopped using nitrocellulose lacquer and went to a polyurethane lacquer. And so you'll see definitely guitars from that year which will either have completely lacquer finished or one of each. I've never personally seen this guitar in anything but a polyurethane body. I've seen this example has what we call is a nitrocellulose neck.
So the nitrocellulose finish on this neck is much thinner and has a nicer feel. This polyurethane finish on here is much thicker and more plasticky. It doesn't feel nearly as nice.
Yeah.
So the nitro necks are way more desirable to play.
Absolutely.
You know, also these finishes on the maple, they tend with age to chip. And they don't look all that good.
Yeah, they don't
wear very well.
So there's a field difference. I think that it doesn't help the tone of the guitars. So 68 is definitely a transition year. These guitars both sort of demonstrate. This is a 69. This one's a 68.
Yeah, the interesting thing, it's hard to see, but there's actually a line that goes all the way around the body here. And what you can see is they had a one-piece body. They actually took a bandsaw and cut like a 1/4-inch slab off, then routed the channel in the guitar, which is just up here. There's a sound channel. Then they glue the back on. So that's how they get this kind of semi-hollow feature out of this guitar.
It's a very lightweight guitar as Telecasters go. Definitely sound a little hollower. Don't have as much of that attack that you'll get out of a standard Telecaster. This is also an interesting thing that the decals changed in 68 and 69, 68 because of the change in the finish. I think the nitrocellulose lacquer lent itself to a decal that wouldn't shrink up as easily as it did on the polyurethane finish decals. So,
well, one thing you will see,
you'll see a transition of both.
Well,
right?
One thing you do see with these decals is that if you notice, I see it mostly on Strats, but the face of the headstock is still always nitrocellulose lacquer. Where even though the rest of the neck is polyurethane, the face is still nitrocellulose because apparently the polyurethane reacted with the decal.
Yes.
So that's why a lot of times you'll see checking on the face of a peg head, but the rest of the neck will be a different color, lighter in color, like this color, because the polyurethane wasn't as UV reactive as the lacquer.
Right.
And the lacquer checks, and the polyurethane doesn't.
Right. This is also the year that the decals were applied from being applied on top of the finish because they were using nitrocellulose. When they made the transition, if you ever, one of the telltale signs of detecting an original decal, though it is very difficult these days because the reproductions are so good for the most part, but
anything prior to 68, the decal is on top of the finish. Anything 68 or later, the decal is under the finish. Starting in 1968, the Fender logo was also thicker and black now with gold trim around it. this transitioned from what was known as a transition logo, which is the logo that's below this peg head, which is a thicker gold logo with black edging around it. The transition logo was used on the Telecaster from late 65 right up to 1968, where this black logo on the thin line replaced it. The thin line peg head and the regular Tele peg head were identical until about late 1970, when they changed the peg head on the thin line models. Tuners are also changed depending on the model. Somewhere in 67 or 1968 they changed to an F-style tuner. This is a completely designed than the Kluson double lines that were replaced by these tuners. Generally speaking, these tuners are not very good. Dot spacing on the thin line is about 7/8 of an inch, because this narrowed out about 1963 from the previous 1-inch width. Starting in 1969, Fender brought back the one-piece maple neck with the skunk stripe in the back for the truss rod insertion. Because if you remember, when Fender went to rosewood fingerboards in '59, maple neck, one-piece necks were no longer made. You could order a maple fingerboard, and what they would do is, instead of putting a rosewood fingerboard on, they would put a maple fingerboard on, a glued-on maple fingerboard, and no skunk stripe in the back. And you saw those rarely through the 60s, but then in 1965, that style of neck became very popular on the Telecaster, where you could get a Telecaster with a glued-on maple neck and no skunk stripe in the back. And they did that, and they officially announced that in 67. So you saw a few 65s, a number of 66s and 67 Teles, and then in a few in 68. But when they went to this polyester finish on these necks, they went back to a one-piece maple neck with a skunk stripe. In 1967, Telecaster bridge saddles changed slightly. They're back to the smooth bridge saddle instead of the threaded model, but there's a
slot cut for the string.
Yeah, there's a slot cut for each string.
Yeah.
A change in late 65 is Fender stopped using what's known as the L series serial number plate, where the number was preceded by an L, and switched to what's commonly called the F plate. As you can see, the large F engraved in the plate. This was used pretty much on up until around 1971, where they switched to a 3-bolt neck system on many of the models. A change in 1967 is now the string ferrules are actually above the body. They actually protrude a little bit above the finish instead of being level with the finish. Note the area right here that has no finish in it. Starting in late 1962, instead of using the nails to hold the body while it was being painted, they used what's known as a stick, which was really just a piece of conduit that was hammered flat and then screwed to that area of the neck pocket to hold the body. And so it was just a stick that sat here, so you'll always get this shadow and no finish in this area right here on anything 1963 on up into the 70s. Note the neck date is still the old style neck date. Starting about 1970, they changed to a more cryptic green ink stamp of the neck date that wasn't so obvious what the year and month was that the neck was made. Notice quite a few things have changed under the pickguard. For one, there is no longer any cloth wiring being used. That transitioned out about 1968 for the plastic-covered PVC wiring. And also note the route for the thin line is different than a standard Tele route. There's no control cavity going between the neck pickup and the pot area. Bottom of the pickguard on these mother toilet seat pickguards is just a glossy white, where on the standard Tele in this era, the bottom of the pickguards are often pearloid on the bottom and glossy white on the top. So they used the same pickguard material, they just reversed it. Here's the underneath of the pickup. Notice the white string has no wax on it, because now they're potting the pickup first and then putting the string on, so the string doesn't get any wax. Notice that the spring right here is actually a spring now. They're not using the rubber. That transitioned out in late 64, but the route is pretty much the same as the standard Tele route underneath the bridge plate. Also notice around late 1964, the fiber base for the pickup changed from a black material to a gray material. You can see this one is clearly gray instead of black.
Wait a minute. Hold still. I'll get it. Ow! Ow, my nose!
And now we're going to talk about the cases of the Telecaster. Here's the first generation, what's known as the thermometer case, used up to about 1953. The next generation is what's known as the poodle case, which looks almost identical to this, except on the bottom of the case, instead of it being shaped like a thermometer, the bottom edge on the floor is actually flat. The next case style is what's known as a rectangle center pocket tweed. This was used pretty much just in 1954. What the difference between this case is that the neck rests right on that area, which lifts up, and the pocket is in the center of the case, hence the name center pocket tweed case. Another interesting thing on the center pocket tweed case is the plastic handle with the latch in the middle of the handle. This was really uncomfortable to carry because the latch would hurt your hand, but the plastic handle is what's unusual about the center pocket tweed case. Next up is the side pocket tweed case. This was used from about 1955, and why it's called a side pocket is because the pocket is on the side. Also, often you will see a Krylon logo in the middle here. This is an early one. Later, in about 1957, they started putting a Krylon logo there. Here's the later side pocket case with the U.S. Krylon Foam Company's label right here in the case. Now, about 1958, they used the exact same case, just the only difference is that the lining changed from this kind of shag red interior to a much shorter orangish, burnt orange interior. All rectangular Fender cases with a side pocket from about 1955 all through the 70s used a metal handle with a leather covering. They used brown covering on tweed cases and brown Tolex cases, and then they switched to a black covering on white Tolex and black Tolex cases. This foil Fender logo was used on 1957 tweed cases. You often don't see it because it gets torn off the case very easily. Here's the case they started using in 1959, known as a brown Tolex case. The covering is now a rubbery brown case. Here's the interior, the burnt orange interior. They used the same interior on the 58 and 59 tweed cases. Also notice that the latch is still right here between the handle. Starting about 1960, they moved this latch from here to here so that the latch doesn't bite into your hand when you carry the guitar. Here's a case that they transitioned from the brown to a white Tolex. The next thing they did is take the exact same case and make the Tolex black with black ends and white piping. And they used that case up to about 67. Note the black leather ends and the more orangey interior. So now the interior has gotten to be a much brighter orange, still with the side pocket. Here's the last generation of case we're going to talk about. Basically a black Tolex case with white piping. And now starting in about, they used this case starting about 1964, 1965, and they used it up to about, they used it all through the 70s actually, but this case has a logo. The logo, the Fender logo, plastic logo, started to come out about 67, 68, and there was different transitions of this. This one just says Fender, then they put a tail under it, and then there was a little plastic R. But it's basically the same case with the same orange interior. Just through the 70s, they changed some of the padding inside the case to make the padding a little thicker and a little bit more robust.
Grab your ear. Come on.
Well, that's it for our video on the vintage Fender Telecaster. I hope you found it useful in your endeavors in collecting and buying vintage Telecasters and helping determine what's original and what's not on these fine classic instruments. If you'd like to give us some feedback, please visit our website at youroldguitar.com, and there's an email link there. You can send us email and let us know what you think of the video. And also check there for some upcoming videos. We're working on a vintage Fender Stratocaster video, and good luck in your vintage guitar endeavors.
Hey, I got a question. Did it help you guys get laid?
Well, you got to learn how to play them, and then that way, that you know, if you learn how to play some licks on them, you'll definitely get the attention.
So Shaggy doesn't know how to play, obviously.
Well, he knows a few licks, but they might just not be the ones that work.
You've been on Letterman. You're a national rock star.
He doesn't like Canadians
what do you
either.
think this is, you freaking stupid Canadians?
Okay, you on?
The whole time.
Listen to your voice.
That was great.
It's okay, but listen to your voice.
I'm not a
It's
fucking weather
it's
deliverer.
very like